On February 11th, 1979, a group of 5 local men went on a fishing trip in Sarah Joe, a small boat off the coast of Maui, Hawaii. The men on the trip were aged between 26 to 38. They had been friends for several years. Between them, they had over 50 years of seagoing experience. They left the harbor at around 10 a.m. The water was calm, and it was a nice, clear day. At 1 p.m., a freak wind swept in from the mountains. It was the first warning that a storm was about to strike. One of the men's father and several others went to the shoreline to try and spot the boat and wave the fishermen in. However, they were unable to see the Sarah Joe. Within hours, the storm arrived in the area. Strong winds and crashing waves came with it. The father went out into the middle of the storm to search for the boat, but came back alone. During the following weeks, family, Coast Guard, and residents of Hana combed the nearby beaches and went out to the ocean looking for the wreckage of the Sarah Joe. With no luck, they gave up the search, however, never giving up hope for the day when the 5 men would return home. As time passed, it seemed as if memories were all that were left of the missing men and the Sarah Joe. 10 years later, on September 9th, 1988, the case of the Sarah Joe took a bizarre turn. On that day, John Norton, a marine biologist, was on a wildlife expedition in the Marshall Islands, 2,000 miles west of Maui. While near a deserted atoll called Taongi, he spotted a small boat that had washed on shore. Norton and his crew landed on the atoll to examine the wreckage. They could see some of the registration numbers on the side of the boat, which indicated that it had been registered in the Hawaiian Islands. Approximately 60 yards from the wreckage, Norton's crew discovered a makeshift grave. It included a pile of coral rocks and a crudely made wooden cross. They also discovered a human jawbone protruding out of the pile of rocks. The men found no evidence that the island was inhabited. Norton recorded the registration numbers on the boat and left the site undisturbed. The Coast Guard ran a check of the numbers and determined that the boat was the Sarah Joe. After the wreckage was identified, the nearby grave site was excavated. A partial human skeleton was uncovered. Dental records determined that the remains belonged to one of the 5 missing men. Another strange clue surfaced when unusual pieces of paper were discovered in the grave. These papers had been buried deliberately. The papers were in an unbound stack, alternated by slips of tinfoil material between the pages. The Coast Guard has not been able to determine who placed the paper there or what purpose it served. Experts agree that the Sarah Joe could have drifted the 2,000 miles to the Marshall Islands. The voyage would have taken about 3 months. However, according to the brother of one of the missing men, a U.S. government survey of Taongi in 1985 found no trace of the Sarah Joe. If this is true, then where was the Sarah Joe between its 1979 disappearance and the 1985 survey? Where are the other 4 missing men? Who buried the man in the makeshift grave? How can a boat not be spotted by ships and helicopters? What is the purpose of the small book in the grave with tinfoil pages? Many questions haunt the case of the Sarah Joe. The family and friends of the missing men hope that one day they will learn what really happened to their loved ones.